This video kicks off a new series of videos called Explained, then a colon, then a reference to the paper. And in these videos I will explain, as the title indicates, an important paper that I cite relatively frequently. I'll begin with a paper by Strona and Bradshaw published in Scientific Reports on November 13th, 2018. The paper is titled Co-extinctions Annihilate Planetary Life During Extreme Environmental Change. From the introduction, quote, "In a simplified view, the idea of co-extinction reduces to the obvious conclusion that a consumer cannot survive without its resources. In fact, even the most resilient species will inevitably fall victim to the synergies among extinction drivers as extreme stresses drive biological communities to collapse. Furthermore, co-extinctions are often triggered well before the complete loss of an entire species, so that even oscillations in the population size of a species could result in the local disappearance of other species depending on the first." Quote, "This makes it difficult to be optimistic about the future of species diversity in the ongoing trajectory of global change, let alone in the case of additional external planetary scale catastrophes." End quote. This paper does something unusual but very important from an ecological perspective. It assumes a rate of change faster than organisms can adapt via natural selection. In other words, it reports on an environmental rate of change much like the ongoing mass extinction event, which is rapidly outstripping the ability of vertebrates and mammals to keep up. This paper finds the extinction of all life on Earth with a 5 to 6 degree Celsius global average rise in temperature. The paper goes on to point out that a previous paper finds, quote, "remarkable tolerance of tardigrades to extreme temperature, pressure, and radiation." The stunning conclusion of that study is that life on our planet has the potential to survive asteroid impacts, supernova, and gamma-ray bursts. This ostensibly reassuring news highlights how some scientists still tend to disregard the role of co-extinctions within collapsing communities in driving global biodiversity loss, while focusing on individual species tolerance limits as the only criteria relevant to species survival in a changing world. Ecologists know the optimism is not supported quantitatively, but can we estimate the magnitude of the bias? End quote. Here we attempt to do this, they go on, by combining real-world and environmental data. We show that neglecting to consider the cascading effect of biodiversity loss leads to a large overestimation of the robustness of planetary life to global change. End quote. So then, what did Strona and Bradshaw find in this open access paper? As reported in the results and discussion section, quote, "As expected, we found that these resultant food webs were more robust to cooling than to heating." End quote. Furthermore, quote, "heating tends to remove the ecologically most important species first." End quote. In addition, quote, "despite their remarkable resistance to environmental change, slowing their decline, our tardigrade-like species still could not survive co-extinctions. In fact, the transition from the state of complete tardigrade persistence to their complete extinction was abrupt and happened far from their tolerance limits." End quote. So this points out a really important factor that is being taken into account here for the first time as far as I'm aware, and that's the idea of co-extinctions. The paper optimistically admits that, quote, "even in case of astronomical catastrophes such as the unavoidable death of the sun, life could survive in peculiar habitats such as hydrothermal vents, and a rogue, seemingly desert Earth wandering across the universe could still have some tiny chance of blooming again under some lucky and unlikely circumstances. These tiny, lucky, and unlikely circumstances are the chances we have for the continuation of life on Earth, based solely on a relatively rapid rate of environmental change. The ongoing rate of planetary warming makes this outcome extremely unlikely. In other words, I strongly suspect we're headed for the extinction of all life on Earth based solely upon a relatively rapid rate of environmental change."